Welcome, friends. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Lou, happy to have you here too.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here as well. We're having a lot of fun just going through chapter 18 and recapping a lot of stuff. But there's a lot of, you were right at the beginning of chapter 18. It's more than just recap because it's a lot deeper, especially into the gunas and how they affect our life in different aspects.
Yes. Yes. People do not understand, in my opinion. Some people will say, oh, it's just a summary of everything. No, there is a marked difference between chapter 18 and the other chapters.
Yeah, much deeper, going much deeper into some of these concepts.
So, friends, today we're going to be talking about the different kinds of happiness. And what Krishna does so masterfully, he divides happiness into so many different kinds. It's important for us to understand, because you think that happiness is just, being happy, laughing, joyful. But you'll see that it's not that simple. And once you break it down, it makes it so much easier for you to try and pursue that true sattvic happiness. So verse 36 says that there are three types of happiness. And it says, whereby by constant practice, a person rejoices, meaning gets happiness, and ends sorrow. He's talking about what is going to come in the next three verses. So one thing you should understand is that mental disturbance causes unhappiness. Unhappiness then encompasses all the negative emotions such as anxiety, fear, sadness, depression. Mental disturbance causes this. If you don't have that mental disturbance, you're not unhappy. For instance, let's say I'm in my 60s, 70s, 80s, and life has been good to me, let's say, and I've got good family, good health, as far as I know, good assets, retirement benefits, pension plan, etc. And I'm leading a quote-unquote happy life, right? Because my mind is not agitated about anything. Nobody has said anything hurtful to me. Nobody's hurt my feelings. I'm going along pretty nicely. Mm-hmm. I have a deep cancer that is terminal, say, giving you an example, that I don't know about. I go to the doctor for my routine checkup, and until he opens his mouth and says something to me, I'm pretty happy. Then he says, hey, you know what? This looks like a pretty far gone, deep cancer. And we got to get it checked out, but it looks pretty serious. What happens? I lose all my happiness. My mental stability, my mental equanimity, my peace of mind is gone out the window. I become anxious, I become fearful, I become sad, I become depressed. Depending on who I am, depending on my personality, my attitude changes. Now, all of a sudden, I've gone from being happy, from being not anxious, not fearful, not depressed, to all of those things, or some of those things. So mental disturbance causes unhappiness of different kinds. So there's three types of happiness: sattvic happiness, rajasic happiness, and tamasic happiness. We will talk about all of those in detail. I don't want to say it now, but all he's saying here is try to shift your happiness from tamas, a little bit higher, to rajas, a little bit higher to sattva, so that you can pursue that. Sattvic happiness is that which involves you pursuing sattvic happiness with regular practice, and only then you can be free of sorrow. Regular practice. We will talk about that. In this verse 36, Krishna calls Arjuna a bull among men. A bull among men. You would think, why is he calling him a bull? You would think that bull because a bull is strong. And you say, he is strong, that's why he's calling you bull. No. What he's saying, my understanding is, that a bull works all day as hard as he can, pulling the plow, doing whatever he can physically, in return for very little in rewards. At the end of the day, the owner of the bull takes him into his shed, Not even like a horse, where you clean him down and brush him like you would a horse. He just leaves him there, throws some hay in front of him, and then he walks away.
Yeah.
So a bull works all day without expecting anything in return. If he gets it, he's happy, but he doesn't expect it. He expects just the hay that he's going to get at the end. So what Krishna says to Arjuna is, you are like that. You work for others without expecting much in return for yourself. So therefore, you're a bull among men. Rajasic happiness and tamasic happiness, they look like happiness, but they're really not. Sattvic happiness is the only true happiness. But we all have all three kinds of happiness. We all have all three gunas. You, I, all of us could not live if we only had one kind of happiness. Some people may say, well, look, if I have sattva, that's the highest, right? If I have sattva, I don't need rajas and I don't need tamas. That's not true. Because without tamas, laziness, indolence, you cannot even rest. You cannot sleep.
Right.
So you need a little bit of tamas in addition to rajas and sattva to be able to sleep, to be happy. But you don't want to be primarily tamasic, or majority of you shouldn't be tamasic, nor should it be rajasic, nor should it be sattvic. You have to have a little bit of all three of them. So let's talk about sattvic happiness. Sattvic happiness is that happiness which appears like poison in the beginning and nectar at the end. So there's a lot of description on this, and you need to, we will go over it briefly. So with practice, only then it becomes nectar in the end. It doesn't automatically become nectar. And we'll talk about what poison means here and what nectar means here, or amrit. Our attention, when it is focused inside instead of outside, like Lou had said in the previous episode, our mind is always outside, looking for dangers, looking for fears, looking for rewards, wishes. Mm-hmm. Instead, if you focus on the inside, that consciousness ultimately finds its way shining onto our own buddhi, our intellect. When you're focused on the buddhi like light, it destroys all sorrow. The buddhi understands, the intellect understands very clearly how futile this outside world is, how futile it is to look for just material acquisitions. And then your mind becomes clearer, your intellect first becomes clear and clean, then your mind becomes clear and clean. You understand the limitation of material acquisitions and sensual pleasures. That starts your way towards getting to sattvic dukkha. In spirituality, you give up your desires. You give up your negatives, pluses and negatives. You give up your desires for material acquisition, for sensual enjoyment. You give up all the negatives, jealousy, fear, greed, envy. All of this starts being given away. We talked about all of this in earlier episodes, because when you give that up, the desire for sense objects, or the desire for things that used to make you happy, as feels like poison in the beginning till you get used to it. Once you have sattvic happiness, they say it is like nectar or ambrosia. Who's they? The masters. The masters, they say that great, unbelievable happiness is actually quantified in the scriptures to say how much happiness sattvic happiness gives. It's a long quantification, but it's really tremendous, they say. It is all from within. It's not related at all to the outside, not to your sense organs, not to other objects from the inside. They say this happiness, this sattvic happiness, comes from within. The joy of life expresses through the mind, which is now absolutely clear and clean, so you feel very happy. Every realized master, from Jesus Christ to Gautam Buddha to all people who have realized the self within, have said the same. They said there's unbelievable happiness in becoming self-realized. They say, I am the world, I am the universe, I am everywhere, I am the ultimate. And it says, I was in the past, I am in the present, I will be there in the future. That happiness that they experience is without any contact with sense organs or anything from the outside. That's sattvic happiness. A strong intellect or buddhi doesn't allow the mind to indulge in material acquisition and sensual pleasures. In the beginning, it's painful, it's poison to stay away from worldly indulgence. But if you persevere, your pleasure is that much greater. So, excuse me, sukha comes from two words in Sanskrit. Su meaning good, that's where the word suastika comes. Su asti means good well-being, swastika. Su asti. So here sukha. Su means good and ka means state of mind. So a good state of mind is happiness. A dukkha, du means bad, not so good. Bad state of mind is dukkha, unhappiness, anxiety, depression. So sattvic sukha takes practice of what? What do you have to practice? We said it has to take practice. Practice of those three things that we were told early on, chapter 2, I think, of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. Shravana means listening. Listen to the scriptures. They didn't say read the scriptures, they say listen to the scriptures. Listen intently. Take note of what it is that you're listening to. And then after you listen, you manana, you give a mental thought to what it is that you're listening to and contemplate, think about it. And after you think about it, then you meditate on it. Close your eyes, push all other distractions out of your mind, and just focus on what it is that you are blocking out. And you might want to just focus on what it is that you learned. So that gives you the practice, and that leads to sattvic happiness. So this repetition brings about the happiness. That Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana brings about happiness. Normally, any kind of repetition is boredom. Here, this kind of repetition, far from being boredom, it actually produces great happiness because you're getting self-knowledge. As you start to go more inward and start looking within yourself, you will start to become aware of yourself and get knowledgeable about yourself. You will start to accept yourself as you are. This is the truth. I'm telling you this. That soul searching, that self searching, that self knowledge will help you a lot. So normally what do? You keep busy. You keep busy doing something or the other. And you think that that brings you gratification or happiness. It doesn't. It's actually just your way of keeping yourself away from looking at yourself within. So you're keeping busy. You need dispassion and you need attention onto what it is that you're doing. You need this vairagya, which is dispassion, and you need maturity, you need dispassion, you need objectivity to understand your own mind. Come to terms with yourself. Accept yourself as you are. You should try and change yourself, but to say to the point that I'm going to be able to change myself, I'm going to accept myself in the interim. Be happy with yourself as you are, as you're trying to change whatever it is that you're trying to change. Learn to live a disciplined life. Key, underline that. Disciplined life. Discipline for everything. You will become more mature. You have taken care of your emotions. You've let go of your past. And then be with it as you are in terms of maturity and this. So now comes the nectar. The why nectar? Nectar, we have only heard of nectar in the scriptures. Nobody has ever seen it. You can't buy it. You can't go to Amazon and say, I want a bottle of nectar. It's not available. But do you know what it is? We say, oh, well, nectar is that stuff that allows you to live forever. No, it is said to give you immortality. So it allows you to live forever. So they say, but is there such a thing? Was there such a thing ever, even in the past when the scriptures were written? No. I think most people have come to the agreement that this nectar that is spoken about in the Upanishads and the Gita is knowledge. Why? Because knowledge is immortality in that it immortalizes you. It gets you closer to the Atman, and Atman is free of time, so that knowledge is immortal. That knowledge, if you die at some point where you've started to get a certain amount of knowledge, carries through to the next life. So in that respect, it's immortal. You don't get born in the next life and at age 12 or 13 you say, oh, I remember this from my lifetime. No, but somewhere within you, this knowledge is there, not in the same words or way that you know it now, but it's there within you. A pure mind, a mind full of this knowledge, is like crystal clear water, flowing water. It encompasses a rock, it flows over it. It sees a rock, it flows around it. Whatever comes in its path, this mind, this clean, pure mind and intellect is like crystal clear water. Sees a rock, goes over it or around it, flows. It sees a valley, it fills it up or goes around it. It doesn't get entangled anywhere. It's never stagnant. It never creates a pool which is dirty, smelly water. It is pure. It is fluid. It is non-resistant. Whatever it is, it is. That's what the mind should say when it's crystal clear. I will deal with it. Never mind. It's okay. The acceptance of whatever it is, including itself, including its own self, the mind, it says, okay, this is it, whatever it is, I'll deal with it. So then comes rajasic happiness. Rajasic happiness is contact, simple, contact of sense organs with sense objects, right?
Yep.
I am freezing cold. I was once in New Zealand and we were on a little cruise ship. My wife, my two kids, and a couple of their friends. And at some point in this freezing cold, we were in this fjord and they said, those of you who want to go out in a canoe, we can let you down from the ship and you can just canoe around. And they said, we're warning you that if you move around a little bit too much, you're going to fall in. The canoe will tip and you'll freeze. That water is ice cold, freezing. We'll send out another boat to pick you up, but it'll take a while. And during that time, you will be extremely cold. So just only go if you're careful and if you want to go, take the risk. I went, I fell in the water.
Okay.
So by the time they lowered somebody else down and picked me up, I was freezing. I was like a block of ice. My sense organs were screaming out for some warmth. I got into the cruise ship, I ran to my room and stood under the hot shower.
Yeah.
The contact of my sense organs and the sense object, which is that hot water, gave me immense pleasure and happiness.
I'll bet.
That is rajasic happiness. Rajasic happiness is a contact of a sense organ with a sense object. The tongue with what it likes, the eyes with what it likes to see, the ears with what sound it likes to hear, and so on, the skin. So even the contemplation of your sense organs having contact with a sense object gives you happiness. That is rajasic happiness. Just thinking about it. So, and thinking about something that will lead to this happiness also gives you that pleasure, that happiness. So I get a lottery ticket and I say, oh, this is the winning lottery ticket. I just won a lot of money. That will give me immense happiness. Why? Not because I can't eat the money, I can't smell the money, I can't taste the money. So why is it giving me happiness? Because I know that with that money, my mind knows I can buy the sense objects and whatever it is that I need, that will give me that rajasic happiness. So just thinking about it gives me great happiness, gives us great happiness. Majority of us have rajasic happiness. It is nectar in the beginning. When you get, this is the key part. Nectar in the beginning, poison in the end, opposite of sattvic happiness. Why is it nectar in the beginning? Because you stand under that hot shower, you're freezing cold, you say, oh, this feels great. Why is it poison in the end? Very interesting. Krishna says that these sense organs, for two reasons, don't continue to give you the same happiness as time goes on. Why? First reason is the first contact that the sense organ has with the sense object gives him tremendous pleasure. With each repeated contact, the same amount of contact doesn't give you the same amount of pleasure. You neutralize to it. You need more and more of that contact to give you the same amount of pleasure. After a while, what happens is you no longer get the pleasure from that contact, but without that contact, you get displeasure. Very interesting. You no longer get the pleasure from the contact, but without it, you get displeasure. What does that mean?
The addiction model, huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, you can see with your eyes, you can use your arms if you're not blind and have you both your arms, and you breathe in oxygen. Now, you've taken the oxygen for granted. So you say, don't even think about it. Just keep breathing every second of the day. But what happens if you suddenly are unable to breathe?
Mm.
Without the oxygen, you get great displeasure. When you're getting the oxygen, don't even think about it. Without the oxygen, you have great displeasure. When you have your eyes, you can see, you take it for granted. Without your eyes and you're blind, you have great displeasure. Without things that you have contact with, which you're taking for granted, you no longer get pleasure when you get it, but without it, you have great discomfort. Another example is that of alcohol. The first drink you get high, you say, oh my God, that was so much pleasure. Each drink you take gives you less pleasure, and with time, the same amount of alcohol no longer gives you the pleasure. You need higher and higher amounts. But at some point, the alcoholic says, I need a drink just to be able to function. No longer does it give me the high that it used to give me when I first started. But without the alcohol, I go into DTs. I have seizures. I go through great displeasure. So it's nectar in the beginning, poison at the end. Now we understand what that means. Poison means painful and sorrowful. And I told you, if I block my oxygen intake, how painful and sorrowful it is, how alcoholic towards the end feels painful and sorrowful. And when you get that immediate happiness with the alcohol, or it soon becomes neutralized. It immediately go back to not being happy again. So mind, that's the first, right? That you need higher and higher quantities. Second thing that Krishna says is that the sense organs themselves, just like with every other part of our body, become old. And as you become old, the same amount of contact doesn't allow that sense organ to start ringing the bell with happiness.
Right.
So you mean just your taste buds no longer give you the same amount of taste, even though the food is exactly the same. You just don't, it doesn't taste good because A, you've become used to it, excuse me, and B, your sense organs are getting older. So diminution of the capacity to enjoy because A, you're tired of the same contact, and because your sense organs are older. And lastly comes Thomasic happiness. Thomasic happiness is something that we all enjoy at some point, right? We look forward to weekends. We look forward to Saturday and Sunday and going away on vacation. That's Thomasic happiness. You look forward to sleeping, to dreaming. That's Thomasic happiness. Thomasic happiness is from delusion of the self. Delusion of the self means that which arises from sleep, from dreams, from avoidance of activity or exertion. You don't want to keep doing things that you're supposed to do or exert your physical body. It arises from laziness and carelessness, and that is all called Thomasic happiness. We'll go over each one of these. The mind becomes dulled at certain times. Just like we were saying before, that your sense organs get dulled as they get older, your mind gets dulled, for instance, when you're under anesthesia, general anesthesia, or when you're drunk or under the effect of drugs, or when there's absence of pain, you feel happy, such as under anesthesia or when you're drunk, or when you're asleep or when you're dreaming. You're sleepy, your carelessness. When you're careless, you say, I don't care. Really, you're in the woods somewhere and people are throwing bottles against a tree, which they shouldn't do. But kids, you see them, adolescents, they're throwing the bottles, completely wanton. In Europe, there are places where you pay, I think, $25 and you go there and there's a big bin. You take these bottles and you just throw them against something just to see them break. And people pay money to go there just to break this. Totally carelessness. So carelessness, forgetfulness, anesthesia, getting drunk, you forget everything. You forget yourself, you forget your past, you forget your duties. This is known as delusion of the self. And that gives you a certain amount of happiness. We've each experienced that. We've experienced it because you say, I'm not even thinking about my job. I'm not thinking about my duties. I feel so happy on a weekend, on vacations.
Right.
That's known as delusion of the self. That's known as Thomasic happiness. As it progresses, what happens is such a person, I mean, what happens to those who hit like a multi-billion-dollar lottery, or people who've just made it rich and just say, I don't want to do anything? You say, this is life. He becomes like a hippopotamus, just sits there in the mud doing nothing. As it progresses, such a person is incapable of taking care of himself, of earning a living, of looking for his own security, or to become spiritual. And what happens is he starts to get sad, gets depressed, because he has nothing in his life. So, three kinds of tamasic happiness. One is happiness arising from ignorance. We talked about this, that a person goes to the doctor, he's unaware that he has terminal cancer. He says he's very happy because he's ignorant that he has this disease. When the doctor tells him, he then gets mentally disturbed and he becomes unhappy. But happiness arising out of ignorance of not just the cancer, but so many other things in life. You don't know what your child is into. You don't know what your spouse is into. You don't know what your country is doing. That is tamasic happiness. Happiness arising from misplacement is the second. Misplacement is sleep, misplacing, avoidance of exertion, laziness, not doing one's duty, one's job, one's work, one's responsibilities. All of these gives temporary misplaced happiness. You say, this is great. I'm on vacation. I'm in Martha's Vineyard and I'm having a great time over here, not even thinking about work. This is just misplaced, because the minute that's over, you're going to get back home and get back to work. Temporary misplaced happiness is tamasic happiness. When you exert, when you're doing work, when you're doing physical work, mental work, whatever, you have some discomfort. That's what's missing in this tamasic happiness. You don't have that exertion. You justify it. When tamasic people say, you deserve it. Come on, it's okay. You don't pressure yourself. Give yourself some time for yourself. Enjoy it. That's tamasic happiness. Third, a reckless lack of caring, carelessness, lack of attention to what you're doing, and being indifferent to the results of what you've done, to your actions, and the results and the consequences to others. That is known as tamasic happiness. So, friends, sorry about taking so long.
No, that was good.
Verses 36 to 39 covered the three kinds of happiness. Now, next time we'll be talking about, as Krishna has been leading up to this, the castes, what the British call the caste system. That's not it. What Krishna describes very clearly is what is a Brahmana, what is a Kshatriya, and what is a Shudra and a Vaishya. So we'll talk about that next time. Thank you very much for joining us. Lou, any comments?
No, very good episode, and I'm looking forward to this because, again, here in the West especially, we have such a different idea of what the castes were, and the British kind of took over that concept, but it's different from what you think.
Yep. Thank you, friends. See you next time.